One time, I stumbled upon an old photo album at my dad's house. As I flipped through the pages, I noticed something strange. All the pictures of my mom had been cut out or torn apart. When I asked my dad about it, he hesitated for a moment before telling me the truth. My parents had a bitter divorce, and my dad couldn't bear to look at pictures of my mom. It was a stark reminder that even the most loving relationships can crumble, leaving only pain and heartache behind.
I once knew a guy who claimed he had the ability to see ghosts. He wasn't just talking about seeing them in his dreams or during moments of sleep paralysis. He insisted he could physically see them in broad daylight. Naturally, I was skeptical and asked him to prove it. He led me to a nearby park and pointed to a bench where he said a ghost was sitting. I couldn't see anything out of the ordinary, but he described the ghost's appearance in detail. A woman in a white dress with long, curly hair. As we walked away from the park, I couldn't help but feel uneasy. I turned around to glance at the bench, and to my surprise, I saw a faint outline of a woman in a white dress with long, curly hair. It was almost like looking at an optical illusion. I couldn't quite make out the figure, but I knew it was there. I never saw the ghost again, and the guy who claimed to have the ability to see ghosts eventually moved away. To this day, I can't explain what I saw that day in the park.
A few years ago, I worked as a night security guard in a large office building. One night, around 2 a.m., I was doing my rounds and I heard some strange noises coming from one of the offices. It sounded like someone was tapping on a keyboard or typing very fast. I went to investigate and found that one of the computers in the office was on and running, even though the office was supposed to be empty. I looked at the screen and saw a chat window open, with messages appearing in real time. The messages were in some kind of code or cipher, and they were coming from an unknown sender. I tried to respond, but the messages kept coming in faster and faster, and they were becoming more and more frantic. Suddenly, the computer shut off by itself, and the room was plunged into darkness. I quickly left the office and reported the incident to my supervisor, but we never did figure out what had happened. To this day, I still wonder what was going on in that office that night.
I used to work the graveyard shift at a gas station on the outskirts of town. One night, a man came in looking for directions to a nearby hotel. I gave him the directions and he left. About an hour later, the same man came back to the gas station, looking disheveled and panicked. He told me that he followed the directions I gave him, but the hotel wasn't there. He asked me to draw him a map instead. I obliged, and drew him a map on a piece of paper. He thanked me and left. But as soon as he stepped out of the gas station, I noticed something strange. His car was parked on the opposite side of the road, and it was facing the wrong direction. He got into his car and drove off in the opposite direction of the hotel. The next day, I asked the morning shift if they knew anything about the man or the hotel. They had never heard of either. To this day, I wonder where that man was really going, and why he needed such detailed directions in the middle of the night.
I used to work at a theme park, and one night, after the park had closed, I was walking back to the employee parking lot when I heard some strange noises. At first, I thought it was just the wind or an animal, but then I heard what sounded like footsteps. I turned around and saw a figure in the distance, moving towards me. As it got closer, I realized it was a person wearing a full-body costume from one of the park's attractions. But what was strange was that the attraction had been closed for the night and there was no reason for anyone to be wearing the costume. The person didn't say anything, just stood there staring at me, and then suddenly turned and ran off into the darkness. It was one of the creepiest experiences of my life, and I still wonder who that person was and what they were doing there.
I once went on a camping trip with some friends and we decided to go on a night hike. We were walking along a dark trail when suddenly we heard this weird, high-pitched humming noise. At first, we thought it was some kind of animal or insect, but as we got closer, we realized that the sound was coming from a large rock in the middle of the trail. We were all freaked out and decided to turn back, but as we did, the humming noise faded away. To this day, we have no idea what that noise was or where it came from.
I was out for a walk one night when I saw something strange in the sky. It looked like a bright light moving quickly, but then it suddenly stopped and hovered in the air. As I watched, the light split into multiple smaller lights and then they all darted off in different directions. I was stunned and couldn't believe what I had just seen. The next day, I searched online for any reports of UFO sightings in my area and found several similar accounts. To this day, I still don't know what I saw that night, but it definitely left an impression on me.
Once, I was on a road trip with my family and we decided to stop at a small town diner for breakfast. As we were waiting for our food, we noticed an older gentleman sitting alone in the corner booth, staring off into space. He seemed lost in thought and didn't seem to notice anyone around him. Suddenly, he stood up and walked over to our table. He introduced himself as a retired astronaut and proceeded to tell us stories about his space travels. He talked about seeing the Earth from a distance, the feeling of weightlessness, and the incredible technology used to make space travel possible. As he finished his last story and went back to his booth, we all looked at each other in disbelief. Was this retired astronaut telling us the truth or was he just a lonely man seeking attention? We'll never know, but the memory of that encounter has stayed with us ever since.
I was traveling alone in a foreign country and decided to take a hike in a remote area. As I was walking, I noticed a man walking behind me. I didn't think much of it at first, but then I realized he was keeping the same pace as me and seemed to be following me. I started to feel uneasy and picked up my pace, but so did he. I turned around and asked him if he needed something, but he didn't respond and just kept following me. I started to panic and ran as fast as I could until I reached a nearby village. When I turned around, the man was nowhere to be seen. I don't know what his intentions were, but I'm grateful that I was able to get away safely.
What's the weirdest dream you've ever had?